Visual syntactic text formatting can help average and below average readers today. A solution for the declining NAEP reading scores. My name's Randall Walker. I'm a retired physician from Mayo Clinic with a longstanding interest in improving human reading with visual syntactic text formatting technology. I've had the privilege of working with educators from grade 6 through medical school, and I am encouraged to see the enthusiasm and determination of young people like this who are in high school or entering college with high hopes and ambition. Over 60% of high school graduates now choose to begin college. However, many of them will not get a college degree. We're dealing now with a widening literacy gap in the U.S. population. The most recent reading scores from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the NAEP, shows scores are dropping further, especially in average and below average students. Compared to 1992, to the most recent year of testing, we see the bottom 10% of our student body has had very big drops across all three grade levels tested, grade 4, 8, and 12. The drop at the grade 4 level would suggest a breakdown in the implementation of the science of reading interventions that are targeting grades K through 4 and emphasize phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. This setback in the bottom 10% persists between grades 4 and 8, and it is not evident that they were able to make up for those fundamental losses. What is even more concerning, though, is that between grade 8 and grade 12, the drop in scores is even worse. And during those years, it is important for students to have learned to read because they need to read well to learn. But something has begun to interfere with the additional progress that students are supposed to make on top of their word decoding skills that ought to have been implemented in the earlier grades. Now, in the past several years, an additional concern is that even at the 25th percentile and the 50th percentile, the grade 12 scores have dropped. Even since the year 2019, those at the 50th percentile had been holding their own, but in the past 6 years or 5 years between 2019 and 2024, This additional drop among 12th graders is a new finding. These drops compared to the 1992 level represent a setback in reading skills equivalent to losing 1.5 to 3 years of grade level in reading proficiency. Compared to 1992, today's average and below average 12th grade students are reading 1.5 to 3 grades lower. Something is pulling down the reading performance of our average and below average students. Some have attributed this to too much screen time. Others have cited the effect of COVID. But longer term patterns also suggest that our society as a whole is not doing as much reading as they used to. And this pattern has been going on since World War II. Parents are not reading at home as much as they used to even 20 years ago, with a 40% drop in the proportion of adults reporting they read for non-work leisure reading at home. It is now less than 20% of the adult population. It is a concern that more than half of our youth are dropping in their reading performance at grade 12. More than half of our population not only has had trouble maintaining their reading, that they are actually dropping more than half. Now, for the past several years, visual syntactic text formatting has been implemented in some of the top hospitals in the United States as a tool to improve the accuracy, efficiency, and safety of physicians' reading. This tool is especially flexible and powerful because it gives instant reformatting of any user-selected text in the healthcare system. As explained in other publications, visual syntactic text formatting helps the reader examine and analyze complex text. It does this by breaking the text lines at phrase and clause boundaries. Shorter rows of text are built to fit within 1 or 2 fixation spans. The cascading of the rows depicts syntactic hierarchies. Multi-row clusters remain vivid in the mind's eye, and the indentations help guide the eyes from row to row. Over the past several years, we have taken the advanced parsing technology that has been used in our top hospitals, and we have deployed it in the cloud. In this way, with applications that can work on anyone's PC or on their mobile device, any reader can read any text in VSTF instantly. We call this new tool ReadMax, It is a personal online reading tool. Visual syntactic text formatting was recognized by the Department of Education's What Works Clearinghouse as a scientifically proven literacy intervention. VSTF has been validated in thousands of students in year-long studies in grades 6 through 11, with additional studies also done in college and medical school graduates. This is an example of how a student's history textbook would be presented in VSTF. When students read their history textbook in VSTF for about 10 minutes a day over the course of the year, they had immediate improvements in their ability to comprehend and remember what they had read, and they also demonstrated long-term learning of the content in the textbook. This graph shows the unit exams that were given every 2 or 3 weeks across the academic year in the 10th grade that was studied. Over the course of the entire academic year, the learning results became very significant, with those in the VSTF group scoring a standard deviation higher than the students in control group. In addition to more comprehension and a higher level of learning, there's a transference effect from using VSTF, reading it every day in one's social sciences class. The studies from grades 6 through 10 on this graph show that while the control group made what would be an expected 1 year's growth in their performance on reading proficiency tests, the students who had been randomized into VSTF groups showed 1 or more additional years of growth. The pre-test, post-test measures were the Northwest Education Assessment for reading proficiency. Testing in the students who were non-native English learners, primarily Spanish, also showed that these students on the same NWEA test began to close the gap between them and the native English students in the control group. A study conducted by the University of California, Irvine, which was funded by a level 3 grant from the Department of Education, involved over 4,000 students. These results are for the 8th graders. The study showed similar results in 7th graders in this study. The pre-test, post-test measure was the writing section of the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium's test for literacy. The writing SBAC measures expository reading and writing and is comparable to the material that is tested in the SAT. It represents a level of academic reading and analysis that is needed to be able to compare and contrast 2 different expository passages and write an essay about them. Using the prior spring score for all of the study participants and using the effect size of growth over the course of an academic year, the results showed that the control group had an expected year's worth of growth comparable to the national median at the end of the 8th grade. By contrast, the VSTF group at the end of the 8th grade had 2 years worth of growth in the course of just 1 year. Based on these results, the Department of Education recognizes VSTF as a scientifically proven intervention that accelerates literacy growth. Separate studies for college freshmen show a wide spread in reading performance between the top third and the bottom third of the study population. These were difficult passages at a grade 15 level, and the students in this study had a within subject study design alternating between reading block format and VSTF format, block format and VSTF format. The VSTF is especially helpful in the lower third of the college freshmen. Their retention scores tripled. The middle third also had a significant rise in their retention scores. Top third did not appear to need the tool in the context of this particular study. Another study done in college students was in Korea in students who were taking English as a second language. The investigator did a baseline test of working memory using working memory measures that are independent of reading. There were 2 groups, the high working memory group and the low working memory group, and there were 2 kinds of comprehension testing done. One comprehension test was for information, and the other comprehension test was for inference making. In the comprehension test for information, VSTF helped both groups, the high and the low working memory group, increase their scores for information-based comprehension. In the inference-making comprehension tests, it was the group with the low working memory who had a substantial rise, attaining a level of inference-making comprehension that was comparable, if not slightly greater, than that obtained by the high working memory group. The investigators hypothesized that by freeing up working memory that would usually be used for parsing the text, VSTF enables these readers to improve their inference-making comprehension. Studies in 11th graders in Colorado were done that used ACT as a post-test and the standardized state testing for the pre-test. The state of Colorado requires all 11th graders to take the ACT, irrespective of their college plans. The ACT organization has stated that if a student can attain an ACT reading score of 21 or greater, they will have a 75% probability of getting a grade C or higher in entry-level social science college classes. What this study showed when the students were randomized to the control condition and the VSTF condition was that a substantial portion of the VSTF group were able to lift their scores up above this 21 threshold. In fact, it was an additional 15% of the study population that were able to get their scores above 21. As we had previously noted, more than half of high school graduates will choose to go on to college based on the proportion who had scores of greater than 21 in our study group. There was still a group at risk who went to college in this lower pie section, but they went to college with an ACT reading score of less than 21. This is the group that is at risk of dropping out without getting a degree. When we look at the impact of having used VSTF in high school to improve one's reading proficiency, what we could see is that there is an expansion of the population who would have a score of 21 or greater. By improving the ACT scores and the reading performance from VSTF in college, VSTF has the potential to reduce the United States college dropout rate. Moreover, while there has been much criticism about too much screen time, especially for non-reading apps such as TikTok or Instagram, the VSTF technology makes on-screen reading more effective, more enjoyable, and more eye-friendly. The college study previously cited asked the college freshmen, did they experience eye strain while reading either the block text or the VSTF text? Over 40% reported eye strain symptoms when reading the block text from a screen. However, only about 10% reported eye strain when reading VSTF text from a screen. High school students preferred by a wide margin reading VSTF over block format. In fact, if their only choice was to read block text with not having any VSTF option, a large majority of the students would rather read that text from a book. By contrast, among those who had VSTF, they would much rather have a laptop to use the VSTF option compared to reading block text from a book. A review of archives from the Winston Churchill Museum shows that he even developed his own form of VSTF to format the famous speech he gave when speaking to Parliament before World War II. When we look at this group of hopeful, aspiring young adults, VSTF can help them become better readers and writers. We also know it can help them improve their fluency in spoken English. We know that it can help them learn more, and by freeing up their working memory so that it is not consumed by having to parse the text, they can think more deeply in more abstract ways about the material they are reading. And these skills, in turn, will empower them to serve our society in these important roles. The tool is available now. We invite you to try it and to contact us. We hope to make this available to all educational institutions as soon as possible. I'd like to thank our collaborators who have helped us in the validation research, the awards we received from the Department of Education, including their recognition of VSTF in the What Works Clearinghouse, Mayo Clinic for the additional research and development they did in physician reading, and the publishers who in prior years incorporated VSTF in their online textbooks. Thank you.